Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to the Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Today we're going to talk about Yoda. Without further ado, let's recap the chronology of Yoda. Chronologically, Yoda first appears as the leading member of the Jedi High Council in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon brought Anakin to the Jedi because he believed that Anakin was conceived by the midichlorians. Mace Windu then infers that Qui-Gon is speaking of the prophecy of the Chosen One, the one who will bring balance to the Force. Many of them view this with skepticism, but Yoda, while skeptical, seems intrigued by the idea, but believes that he knows that Qui-Gon wants Anakin trained as a Jedi. Qui-Gon pretends that that's not necessarily the case, but Yoda can see through it. So, Yoda is also the member of the council that doesn't seem as skeptical about the idea of the Sith returning. Both Ki-Adi-Mundi and Mace Windu think that that's kind of preposterous, with Mace saying, "I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing." But Yoda says, "Hard to see the dark side is." Yoda seems to be the one who thinks that this may be possible. Yoda then interviews Anakin, or rather, after some testing, speaks to Anakin about fear being the path to the dark side. We know that famous speech. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. And then later, after Qui-Gon's death, when Obi-Wan insists he will train Anakin without the Council's permission if need be, Yoda reluctantly acquiesces, but warns Obi-Wan that he's afraid of what's going to happen in Anakin's future. He had described Anakin's future as clouded, probably due to Palpatine clouding the Jedi's judgment, which is also why they may have been skeptical on accepting the Sith's return. So, we then jump ahead 10 years to during the events of Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Yoda, of course, continuing as a leading member of the Jedi High Council, also training some of the Jedi younglings, which seems that almost all the young Jedi initiates are under the tutelage of Yoda at some point or another. We know that Obi-Wan was. Yoda, with the help of some of his students, helps Obi-Wan determine that the planet Kamino was deliberately erased from the Jedi archives to hide its location and therefore the existence of the clone army. Yoda instructs Obi-Wan to go and investigate, which leads Obi-Wan to discovering Sifo-Dyas and the fact that Jedi Master Sifo-Dyas commissioned a clone army without the Jedi's permission. The Jedi, yet again, with their clouded judgment, accept the clones and lead them into battle. When Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan are about to be eaten in the Geonosis arena, the clones, under the direct command of Yoda, come to the rescue. After, of course, Mace Windu led the Jedi into the arena, only to have them pretty much cornered by Count Dooku and his droids. But Yoda basically brings the cavalry in. Okay. And then, of course, Yoda faces off with Count Dooku, his former apprentice, and demonstrates that he is that he is basically Dooku's equal when it comes to telekinesis, though demonstrates to Dooku that he has the power to absorb Dooku's force lightning, which seems to be something the Count didn't expect. Then they engage in a lightsaber fight, which yet again they're about equals, though Yoda demonstrates that he really is a great warrior. Though, as he would later say, war's not make one great. Dooku escapes as he basically pulls down an object about to smash Obi-Wan and Anakin, enough to distract Yoda into saving them, rather than continuing the fight with his former apprentice, showing that Yoda is indeed more interested in doing good and helping others and using the Force for defense than he is about fighting. A good lesson. It is then Yoda who gravely informs Mace Windu and Obi-Wan that the Clone War has begun. Begun, the Clone War has, he says. We jump to 3 years later, toward the very end of the Clone War. Yoda is counseling on Anakin how to deal with his troubling dreams and fears of losing people that he cares about. Yoda teaches him about death really isn't something to be afraid of. But unfortunately, Anakin's obsession with Padme's death leads him to seek advice from Palpatine, who, of course, uses that to his advantage. Yoda goes to Kashyyyk to help the Wookiees and the clone army fight an invading separatist army. Unfortunately, when the clones turn on the Jedi, Tarful and Chewbacca help Yoda escape from the carnage. Yoda then leaves in a little pod and is, if I'm trying to remember correctly, it's been a little while since I watched Revenge of the Sith. Yoda then travels with Obi-Wan to Coruscant to basically activate a signal that will warn the Jedi dispersed throughout the galaxy not to return to Coruscant, because the Republic has fallen and the clones have turned against their Jedi masters. Yoda and Obi-Wan unfortunately discover that Anakin has turned to the dark side and has helped to slaughter the Jedi in the temple. Yoda then hunts down and faces off with Darth Sidious, and they engage in a ferocious lightsaber battle in the Senate Rotunda at the same time that Obi-Wan is facing down with Anakin on Mustafar in an epic battle that cuts back and forth between the two to the new music of Battle of the Heroes and the classic piece of Duel of the Fates. Unfortunately, Yoda, as powerful as he is in the Force, cannot defeat Darth Sidious and has to escape. With the help of Bail Organa, escapes. Yoda knows he has to go into exile because of Order 66. Bail Organa takes Yoda to his ship, where Yoda and Obi-Wan, unfortunately, after Obi-Wan had to leave Anakin for dead, Obi-Wan takes the Padme to Bail Organa's ship. And they travel to the asteroid of Polis Massa. Here, a dying Padme gives birth to twins. Names them Luke and Leia, and she passes away. Yoda and Obi-Wan debate about what to do. Yoda instructs Obi-Wan to take Luke to the Lars family on Tatooine. And Bail Organa volunteers to take Leia with him back to Alderaan. Yoda, of course, then goes into exile on Dagobah. 22 years later, Luke travels to Dagobah and meets Yoda, at first dismissing Yoda as an annoying pest. Yoda then reveals himself to be this wise Jedi Master. Obi-Wan, in spirit form, had told Luke to seek out Yoda. Yoda trains Luke and teaches him more about the ways of the Force, about what the Force is, about the fact that the Force relies on you believing that you can do things. Luke couldn't lift the X-Wing out of the swamp because he didn't believe he could. Yoda, of course, offering endless amounts of quotable lines. But Luke decides to head off to Clan City to save his friends, despite the warnings of both Yoda and the spirit of Obi-Wan. Luke leaves and, of course, gets his rear handed to him by Darth Vader. Vader makes, of course, the big revelation that he is Luke's father. A year later, Luke returns to Dagobah to maintain his promise that he would return to Yoda. Yoda confirms the fact that, indeed, Vader is Luke's father. Yoda, who's old and weak and sick, is ready to accept death because he's not afraid of it. Yet again, speaking some advice to Luke and telling him he has to confront Vader. Yoda then passes away and becomes one with the Force and vanishes like Obi-Wan did. After the Empire is defeated and Anakin is redeemed by Luke, Yoda appears in spirit form during the celebrations on Endor. Or the forest moon of Endor, I should say. 30 years later, yet again, a great Jedi appears to teach a lesson to another Jedi who needs it. Yoda appears to teach a lesson to Luke about letting go and chiding Luke for the fact that instead of passing on what he learned from his mistakes. His primary mistake being the fall of his nephew, Kylo Ren. Yoda kind of gets after Luke and says, "You didn't teach Rey about what you'd learned from your mistake. All you did was sulk about it for many years and just sit around going, man, I did something dumb. Instead of trying to make something out of your life and pass on this knowledge." Yoda kind of gives Learn a good talking to. But also teaches him a lesson by burning the tree, teaching Luke to let go of the past. The lesson succeeds, and Luke returns to save the galaxy and be the hero he was always meant to be. And that is the last we've seen of Yoda. That is the chronology of Yoda. We'll see whether or not he appears in The Rise of Skywalker. One minor note, though, is we did hear Yoda's voice when Rey touched Luke's lightsaber in The Force Awakens. It was Yoda explaining what the Force is. Now, we learn in Star Wars The Clone Wars that Yoda learned how to maintain his essence after death and become a Force ghost because he'd been led on a journey by Qui-Gon Jinn to discover the secrets of immortality. A journey which is covered in the final season of the Clone Wars. Or, should I say, penultimate season of the Clone Wars, with the next season coming. Alright. So it was then Yoda who taught it to, or helped steer Obi-Wan in that direction, and helped steer Anakin in that direction. Also occurring in the penultimate season of the Clone Wars. Season 6. Alright. Yoda is my second favorite Star Wars character. After Palpatine. I absolutely love Yoda. Everything he says is so quotable, and the way he says it. Which apparently a lot of that was Frank Oz's idea. Of having Yoda speak kind of backwards. To me, it gives it a more biblical flavor. It's like reading passages in the Bible where things are kind of said in a kind of backwards way, you might call it. Yoda is a marvelous creation, being one of the greatest puppets ever made. Now, yes, they did the puppet in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which is now CG in the Blu-ray release, which actually matches the other prequel appearances of Yoda a little bit more closely. Because I have to admit, the Yoda puppet in The Phantom Menace, Episode 1, was very different looking than the other puppets of Yoda. So I don't mind that George wanted to change that to CGI later. But nonetheless, it's still very believable puppet in The Phantom Menace. My favorite, of course, visual appearance of Yoda is how he appeared in The Empire Strikes Back. A puppet with the most expressive eyes I've ever seen. So believable. Never for a moment do you question his existence. Kudos to Frank Oz. Frank Oz, in every appearance of Yoda in the films, it's been Frank Oz doing either the voice or the puppetry or both, depending on which film. I very much appreciated that they brought him back for The Last Jedi and those scenes. Or that scene, since it's only one scene. I think maybe the best scene in the movie. Or one of. Okay, maybe not the best, but one of the best. Now, those the books that look a little bit not as good as he did in the original trilogy in The Last Jedi. There has been some discussion that his appearance in The Last Jedi, he didn't look quite right. Okay, that may be true. I think it's difficult to replicate the success that they had in the original trilogy of making Yoda look so believable. Now, I don't want to criticize too badly, but now that I've seen the Dark Crystal series, I'm a little disappointed that the puppet of Yoda didn't look better in The Last Jedi. Now, I'm not saying he looked horrible, but he didn't look as good. And now that I've seen what can be done with the Dark Crystal being almost fitting in so well with the original movie in terms of puppetry, I wish Yoda looked better. This, however, does not take away my enjoyment of that scene. Also, I have heard it said, and I disagree completely, that Yoda didn't look good as a puppet in The Last Jedi because they didn't care. I actually heard somebody say that, and I could not disagree more. Maybe it didn't work out as well. I'm glad it's a puppet. I thought that was great. I'm glad he is a puppet, I should say. But it could have been better, yes. But I still enjoyed that scene. And yet again, Frank Oz delivers. Yoda is a fantastic character. One of the most quotable, one of the most beloved. Not just in Star Wars, but I think in all of cinema. One of the most recognizable. We all, of course, know Yoda's signature. Hopefully you can hear that when I did that. Which actually sounds a little bit like... I do terrible impressions. So mine sounds like the Chamberlain from the Dark Crystal. But the brilliance of the Jim Henson puppet shop, the brilliance of Frank Oz, brilliance of George Lucas and Lawrence Kasdan in creating this character. Just, Yoda is an extraordinary creation. I absolutely adore this character. And I just hope to see him again in some form, in some other live action media. Or even more cartoons, because he has been in the Clone Wars and on Rebels. So those are my thoughts on Jedi Master Yoda. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And thank you for tuning in to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.